this lately, but for this one, I had to. I had to because I care. Pretty much everything was wrong with this guitar when it came in, and it could happen to you. So let's talk about it. This is the ever iconic Gibson LG1. I've done videos on the LG0 and the LG2. I've yet to get my hands on an LG3. So I just had to nab it. But the reality is, you know, most of our dream guitars, no matter how beautiful, they're usually hiding some kind of ugly secret. Sometimes more obvious than others, but if you're looking to buy vintage, and you should, and you don't want to gamble on a guitar that plays as bad as this one did, and you don't, this video is for you. So gambling, an addiction for some, greatest fear of all for others. Buying a vintage guitar, it can kind of feel like a gamble, can't it? It doesn't have to be a gamble if you know what you're buying, which is the whole point of this video. A video born out of this crazy story of my wife. She actually found this guitar on Facebook Marketplace, and I ended up knowing the guy. I used to work with him, and I had to just tell him, you know, kind of meekly how destroyed his dream guitar really was. So today I'm going to run you through the 4 most important things to do when buying any vintage guitar. I'll even take you through my on-the-spot setup checklist so that you can, you know, use these tools to inform yourself, to better inform yourself how to buy a vintage guitar so that you don't get one as bad as I did. You haven't even seen inside this thing yet. So the first thing you got to know, and I can't decide if this is the most important thing or second, I'm just going to start with it. If you're going into someone's house or somebody's shop, you gotta be kind. Be nice. We live in a world chock full of arrogance and people who never really seem to learn how to be accountable for their actions, don't we? And being a channel that's like heavily based on guitar content, I know that there's a lot of dudes out there, and I know that a lot of dudes have a lot of work to do in that facet. So if you're going into someone's shop to buy a guitar, have poise, read the room. Don't be like an arrogant, like know-it-all guitar player, because at the end of the day, this is just a guitar, right? Those things can come off really ugly. Now, the next thing we should touch on is very logical. There's a reason people are selling these guitars. You just need to find it. You need to be a detective. Nobody wants to sell their dream guitar, right? Get the story, find out why they're selling it, look the thing up and down and inside. Look inside the guitar if you can. Now, this guitar sell-off was the impetus of a breakup, a very tragic and common guitar story, isn't it? It's also a catch-22. You sell the thing that makes you money. If you're not making money off of music, you're selling the thing that brings you joy in a tragic and hard situation. Why would you do that, right? So that is a clue. This thing must have something wrong with it, which takes us over to the third thing: be informed. Knowing about the model of your guitar, knowing about basic guitar setup. These can go a long way. In a second, I'll give you a rundown of everything I look for. If that goes over your head, at any point, I have a free PDF download on my Patreon of my basic guitar setup guide. You can download that for free if you become a member, which is free to do. But before we get into any of that technical stuff, knowing a little bit about the particular guitar will help you know if it's valued correctly. So let's take what I know about the Gibson LG1 and see how this particular one checks out. All right, so the serial number puts us right around 1967, an iconic time for the LG with the adjustable saddle, which this one does not have. They're also known for their plastic bridges, which this one's made out of wood. The LG 1 and 2 both have the spruce top with the sunburst. How do you tell the difference then? Well, you look inside. If you see an X brace, which I see in this guitar, that's the LG 2. If you see a ladder brace, that's the LG 1. You can also just look inside and see the stamp, and that says LG 1. But I also see the X brace, so that's when stuff starts to get a little fishy. So what you gotta have when you're checking out any vintage guitar. So hopefully you listen to step 1 and you were nice, because you're about to ask them to put a mirror and a phone inside their guitar. It's good to do because you stick the mirror and you can see everything, right? Well, not this well, but you know, you can start to see what's going on inside the guitar. I could see the X brace, but I could also see ghosting of the old ladder bracing. So it wasn't like a super rare LG1 or something like that, right? Somebody modified it at some point, which it's an opinion whether it makes the guitar more or less valuable. To me, it actually makes it less valuable. I'm not super excited about this whole trend of taking ladder brace guitars and making them X brace. I think diversity is a good thing. So that's a hot topic. It's also a good time to check out the quality of any cracks you see, which this guitar has plenty of. Some of the old cracks were repaired really, really crudely. I mean, I'm talking like almost as bad as you could get. Which didn't really bother me because you start to get used to seeing that kind of thing. But actually what concerned me was these two cracks right here. They were not repaired at all, and they were actually folding in on themselves. they didn't look like new cracks either. Like they look like they've been there a while, like they're dirty. So that kind of thing freaks me out. You should also take the time to check out the bridge, if it's pulling or not. They tend to come off over the years. You should also take a second to check out the saddle height while you're looking at the bridge. If the saddle height's really low but your string action is really high, you might want to walk away from that guitar unless you're looking to spend another $1,000 to get it repaired and get your neck reset. You can bring a ruler, of course, and you can actually measure the action. If it reads anything more than like 5 or 6 30 seconds and there's not a lot of saddle left, it's not a good thing. You can also check the relief, right? So you just put your first finger here and you put your thumb here. If you hear a little bit, that's probably a decent amount of relief. If you don't hear anything, you don't have any relief. And if you hear a lot, or you can like visually see like there's still a lot of space, that's a good sign, like, hey, there's probably too much relief, right? That's a good time to actually check the truss rod, which I forgot to do in this instance. Turned out it was okay in the end. And while you're over there, you can check if there's any breakage on the headstock, which this one had. It was wide open. You can also check the heel of the guitar. Is it coming off the guitar? Has the neck ever been reset? Is there evidence of that? Was it done cleanly? You should check the frets. Is there any fret height left? Is there any like divots? Basically mean you need new frets. Now Gibson guitars generally have low and wide frets. Just good to know. But if they're shaved at any time, they might be unusable and have a really gross feel under your hands, like low frets. Those don't feel good to play. That's another several $100s to get new frets. Are all these things going to be worth the money to buy the guitar? And so that leads me to the last thing here you got to have in your back pocket is knowing your needs. You got to know your needs. You got to know your needs. Does it meet the needs of you as a restorer, a player, a collector? These are all different for different people, right? But write it down. Tell it to yourself before you walk in the door, because seeing a guitar with this much vibe in person, man, it can be really seductive. And after all your detective work, they might not budge on their price. And then what, right? So if it doesn't meet your needs, it's an easy pass. But for me, my needs were the neck angle had to be good. If the neck angle was good, I told this to my wife, I will buy it. Honestly, the only thing good with this guitar was the neck angle. But I wasn't scared away because I had that in my back pocket. Anything else as a restorer, I could just do over the course of a month during my lunch breaks, which is about what it took. Because after all that, be nice, be a detective, be informed, know your needs. Actually, we still both walked our way screwed. He got a lot less than he wanted. I paid a little more than I wanted. But you know what? When you're both in last place, I guess you're both winners. All right, and if you made it this far, you are in the small minority of people who actually watch these whole videos. It's really just us right now, and I've got a question for you. Should I make more videos like this in the future? I used to do them, like these kind of guitar profiles and some restoration stuff. Kind of walked away from it. They're a lot of work, but I've also had this idea in my head about adding like a Patreon tier, like a little piggy bank. If it raises to enough money, we can buy an old ratty guitar and fix it up together using just basic tools, make a series out of it. I don't know, let me know if that sounds cool. Otherwise, download that PDF checklist. Good luck in your vintage guitar search. If you're searching, one of the most nourishing things I've ever done as a guitar player is owning a vintage guitar and learning how to take care of it. That's something I like to do, and I feel like I kind of garner that kind of person here on YouTube. So otherwise, you can check out my playlist here of all the other Gibson videos I've done. I've got some really cool stories to share. We'll see you there. Be kind, people.